Hello and welcome to our first video on the first sounds that we are going to dive into here in this pronunciation course for Arabic speakers, okay? These are some principal sounds that are some of the most common sounds that speakers confuse. So we're going to start with these consonant sounds so that it's something we can keep remembering throughout the program, okay? So let's get started. Here for our first session, we are going to be talking about the P and B sounds, so the P and B, versus the F and V, the F and V consonants. We're going to talk about the pronunciation challenges that tend to come up for native Arabic speakers and some tips for success moving forward so that you can feel confident with these sounds in the future. So what we're going to cover in this lesson. We're going to talk about the similarities and the differences between these common consonant sounds because they have some things that are the same and some things that are different, okay? So we're going to compare those. We're going to review the common mistakes that may come up. We're going to talk about what voiced and unvoiced sounds are. These are going to be important terms for moving forward that are going to come up continuously. So it's really important that you understand this part of the video. And then we're going to go into our first part of how to practice effectively. So I'll explain to you how you can expect to practice throughout the practice sheets and the way that you can practice throughout this course. Okay, so let's get started. The first thing we're going to talk about are the P and B sounds. So the P and B. P, B. We're going to talk about how to distinguish them. So the P sound. This is a sound that tends to be difficult because it does not exist in modern standard Arabic. So because this sound does not exist, we feel the tendency to change it into a different sound that is more comfortable that comes from our native language. So the P, P. Try to make that sound a couple of times with me. It's okay if you feel like you're making it differently or it's not coming out 100% the way you want. That's okay. We're just practicing. P, 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 P. Okay? So to better understand the P sound, we're going to analyze the B sound because the B is a sound that does exist in Arabic. So we're going to make these comparisons so that we can then move forward with more confidence with the P. So for the B sound, this B, the B, and make this sound with me. B is the B in words like bat, brown, bull. Bat, brown, bull. Okay, so this is a B sound that we're more comfortable with. But the difference between them is this. So we have two different types of sounds when we talk about consonants, okay? We have something that's called a voiced sound and something that's called a voiceless sound. So less meaning without, so without voice, okay? Voiced versus voiceless. These are terms that are going to come up a lot. So what do these mean? Voiced sounds are sounds that require your vocal cords to vibrate, okay? So if you make the B sound, for example, B, 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 and you put your hands here on your throat, B, B, you'll hear your throat moving, okay? So let's try, when you're just speaking in general, with all of the sounds that require you to use a voiced sound, it's making your voice or your throat, your vocal cords vibrate when you're speaking. So if you put your hand here, I want you to put your hand here on your throat, just lightly, don't press, just lightly on your throat. And I want you to say a sentence. I want you to say, hi, my name is, and your name. Hi, my name is Kayla. Hi, my name is Kayla. And you'll feel that your voice is vibrating, your vocal cords are vibrating. So there are certain sounds where those vocal cords are activated, but then there are sounds where we do not activate them, okay? So that depends on the consonant sound. So a voiced sound, an example of that would be the B, B, the B. Or another sound would be a Z, right? Zzz, like the buzzing of a bee. Zzz, zzz. We have vibration. But then there are sounds that have no vibration, where we don't need our vocal cords to vibrate. An example of this would be the S sound. No vibration there. And the only difference between a sound like a Z, and an S, is whether we activate our vocal cords or not. But the rest of what we do with our mouth to make those sounds is the same, okay? So if we compare the voiced Z, so voiced means we activate vocal cords, like in the word zoo, zoo, and then we compare this to a voiceless sound, like if we keep the oo at the end the same, but we change this into an S, Sue, Sue. And then it is the name Sue. So we have zoo versus Sue. And the way we make the Z and S in our mouth is the same. It's the same mouth, tongue, jaw position. The only difference is whether we're activating our vocal cords. So this is something you're already controlling on a day-to-day basis, even if you didn't realize it. So you do this in your native language and you do this in English, okay? So what we're gonna do is make the comparison with the P and the B. So with the P versus the B, B, is a voiced sound. We use our vocal cords, like in the name Ben, Ben. But we also have a voiceless version of this consonant, an unvoiced sound, which is the P. So here we don't want to activate our vocal cords, like in pen, pen. So you'll feel that when you say a word, other sounds in the word will vibrate, like the or the n in pen. But the first sound, just the p on its own, should not vibrate. So try that yourself a couple of times. Okay? And I'm going to give you some tricks. If you feel like you're still pronouncing a B, I'm going to give you some tips to not do that. Okay? So just hang on a moment. So we have words like Ben voiced and pen with a voiceless P. So that's the difference between the B and the P. Now some tricks for the P sound so that we can make it with more efficiency. So we want to start with our lips closed, just like with a B, and then we just release the air. And in American English, the sound is aspirated, which means that it sounds like there's a tiny H, a tiny after the P, when it's at the beginning of a word specifically, or before a stressed syllable. We're going to talk about syllables later, so if you're confused by syllables, don't worry about that now, okay? So when it's at the beginning of a word especially, we're going to hear an aspirated sound after the P. You're going to hear a puff of air. And really what this is like is when you whisper a B sound, okay? Because if you say, just like we did at the beginning, say, hi, my name is Kayla, with your name. Hi, my name is, here with your throat, or your hand on your throat. Hi, my name is Kayla. Now say it again, but whisper. Hi, my name is Kayla. Hi, my name is Kayla. You'll feel that all of a sudden, your throat isn't vibrating anymore. And that's because when we whisper, we can't create voiced sounds. There's not enough friction. There's not enough air moving through our throat for that to happen. So if you say a word with a B and you whisper it, it will actually sound like a P. So if this word before, if I try to say the name Ben and I whisper it, what I'm actually making is a P sound, and I'm actually saying pen. So I want to be able to do that like when I whisper, but just say it louder. And that'll be practice with that p, 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 p. So you can practice trying to say a B sound, but whisper it. P, 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 p. And that is the P, okay? So that's the P that you're trying to make. So let's see some examples with the P. And here I have the regular word, how it's written on the left-hand side. And then on the left-hand side, and then on the right, I have inserted a small H. So you can imagine that puff of air, that aspiration that comes after the P, okay? So first we have pink, pink, practice, practice, plate, plate, and prep, prep. Okay? So those are some examples with our P sound. Remember, a little bit of aspiration and whisper the word if you still feel like you are making a B sound. All right, and we're going to practice with some minimal pairs. So what are minimal pairs? Minimal pairs are really great ways to practice pronunciation because they are words, sets of words, where the only difference between one word and the other is one specific sound in the word. So for example, in the words pig and big, the only difference is the P and the B sounds. But if I produce another sound, if I say it another way, then it sounds like I'm saying another word. So we want to be really strong with our minimal pairs so that we have more clarity when we are speaking, so that people don't get confused about the word we are trying to say. Okay, so that's why we practice minimal pairs. You will see these in all of our practice sheets. All right, so for the first one, pig, big. Pig, whisper the word if you need to, pig, to make that p, pig, big. Next, pay, pay, bay, pay, bay. And with the p, you should feel a small puff of air if you put your hand here outside of your face. P, p, p. You should feel a puff of air come out afterwards with that aspiration, like a tiny H. P, pig, pay. Okay? If you don't feel that aspiration, try to imagine the H there. P, p. Next, pear, bear. P, p. Pear, bear. And we can also practice them at the end of words, okay? So in this one, rope, rope, robe, rope, robe. So with rope, if you feel like you're making it a B, whisper the word rope, 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 robe. All right, and that way we can start to practice with that P sound. All right, so that was the P versus the B. Okay, so now we're going to go into the F versus V sounds because there's a really common similarity, or there's a lot of intersection. There is a lot of similarity that we have between the differences in these sounds. So it's very complementary to do them together. So we want to distinguish now between the F and the V. And we're going to distinguish between them the same way that we distinguished between the P and the B. Okay. So we're going to start with the V sound because this is the sound that does not exist in modern standard Arabic. This is the sound V, V, V. Like in the words vet or van or very. Okay, so practice, try and make that V sound with me, even if it's difficult. Nice, great job. So to better understand the V, we are going to analyze the F, which we do have in modern standard Arabic. So the F sound is what we find in words like fly, fat, or fun. Say those with me. Fly, fat, fun. And let's hear the F just by itself. Okay, great. Great job. So the difference between the F and the V is the same as the difference between the P and the B. What we are doing with our mouth is the exact same. The only difference is whether we activate our vocal cords or not. So remember that a voiced sound is where we do have a vibration of our vocal cords. Voiceless sounds are like when we whisper and we have no vibration. Okay, so voiceless sounds have no vibration of our vocal cords. So for a voiced sound, V is the voiced version of an F. Okay, so if we say a word with an F that will be easier for you as native Arabic speakers, as in the word fairy, Fairy. If we activate our vocal cords and find that tension in our throat, and we vibrate, very, very, we change the word into very with a V. And I'll show you guys what this looks like. With an F, my top teeth touch my bottom lip, and air just flows out. With the V, my top teeth touch my bottom lip. I just have to make my throat vibrate, okay? And with that, we're all good. And we can go back and forth between an F and a V sound without even changing what we're doing with our mouth. So try this for yourself to challenge yourself and see if you can do it. So if I start with an F, I can go to a V. So I'm going back and forth between them. And you can do that as well. So practice with that so that you can make sure you are very good at controlling your voiced versus voiceless sounds. And like I said, this concept of voiced versus voiceless is going to come up constantly when we talk about consonant sounds, okay? So I'm going to bring this up a lot. So it's really important for you to watch this part of the video again or watch this video again if you feel like you are still confused about the voiced versus voiceless idea, okay? Because it's going to come up again and again and again. So let's keep going, analyzing this V versus F. Here's some tricks for the V sound, okay? So like I said, it's the same as the F, but we just want to activate our vocal cords. We want vibration. And our top teeth touch our bottom lip, and you should feel that your lip is vibrating. It's like a tickle. It's like a tickle on your throat and on your lip. And if it's hard for you to make your voice vibrate here, try lowering your voice when speaking until you feel your throat vibrate, just so that you can start to learn how to control it. So if you're a woman, perhaps try and sound more like a man when you say a word and find that deep voice. And that will help you find that V a little easier. If you're a male and it's hard for you to find that, just try the same thing. Try deepening your voice as you speak, and that will leave you with more vibration, okay, to find that V sound. So those are some tips and tricks if the V is hard for you. So here are some examples with the V sound of some different words. Voice, vibrate, 7, serve. So we see we can have the V at the beginning of the word, in the middle of the word, like in 7, or at the end of the word, like in serve, okay? So a V can show up anywhere in a word. And we'll practice minimal pairs or pairs of words where the only difference between one word and the other is in one sound. So in this case, the difference is between an F or a V sound, a F or a V. So here's some examples. Fine with the F, no vibration. Fine, vine. Deepen your voice if you need to find the vibration. Fan, van. Vibration, van. Safe, save. Surf, serve. Surf, serve with vibration. Okay, great job with those minimal pairs. If it's still tricky for you, that's okay. This takes practice and muscle memory. So we're going to be working on these things, and the more you do it and try to practice controlling your voice, the easier it will be for you. I can promise you that. And then I also have, you'll find this in your practice sheets and your PDFs, tongue twisters. So tongue twisters are a great way once we feel we have more confidence and we want to start to challenge ourselves more with different sounds. They're such a great way to practice. So here I have specifically with the sounds that are not the same as Arabic and that we want to practice with, like the P, the P, and the V sounds, practicing with these. So for example, for the P, a very typical tongue twister, Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. And we want to have that aspiration, the after each P. And you should feel, if you put here your hand in front of your mouth when speaking these, Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. You should feel a little puffs of air hitting your hand. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. All right. So take this as slowly as you need to practice. And remember with the P, if you want to find that sound without producing any B sounds, we don't want a B, we want a P. You can whisper the tongue twister to practice with your P. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. And that way you cannot make a B sound. So you're practicing with controlling that P more easily. All right. And then we have for V practice as well. Lower your voice for this if it's hard for you to find the V. The vet gives very good advice and values his vacation time. The vet gives very good advice and values his vacation time. So here we have V's at the beginning of the word, like vacation or values. We have it in the middle of the word, like with advice, or at the end of the word, like with give, or gives in this case. Okay, so these are some great tongue twisters to practice, and in your PDFs, you'll find these. So now how to practice moving forward. We have some tips, we have some tricks, we know the sounds, we know the difficulties, we know the similarities. We learned unvoiced versus voiced sounds. So how do we start to practice all of this? So in the PDFs and with the audios that come with it, you'll hear my voice and be able to practice with me. We're always going to start small. So the first thing we want to practice is with individual sounds and words, especially if it's a difficult sound for you. Take it slow it down, do it little by little. Once we feel good with individual words and sounds, then we want to put them into phrases and sentences, okay? So you'll start to say things that are a little bit longer, put it in a phrase, put it in a sentence, and you'll find those in the PDF as well. And then we're going to challenge ourselves when we keep getting more and more confidence and we're building that muscle memory. We're going to challenge ourselves with tongue twisters to help improve that muscle memory and make it more quick, right? More natural, speedier. And then a really important part is recording ourselves to track our progress. Oftentimes when we speak out loud, we hear something differently when we say it than what other people hear. And that's because most people are not trained to hear subtle differences between sounds, and it's hard for us to find that difference sometimes on our own. So something as simple as recording yourself and listening back to how you said the phrases or the words and comparing it to the audio that you are given in your PDF practice sheet, then by comparing how you said it in a recording versus how I say it on the audio, you can hear which words sound really different, right? And then you know which words to practice. We always want to, the first time we go through a practice sheet, we want to find the most difficult examples and then keep practicing those, all right? We don't want to practice things that are easy because it's easy. That means we're already good at it. We want to practice the things that are difficult. And what's difficult for you may not be difficult for another person. So it's important to identify what your difficulties are and what you feel really good at so that you can know that moving forward. Okay? That is all for this first video on the P and B and F and V differences. Go ahead and take a look at your practice sheet and get to work. I'll see you in the next video.